Hey guys, this is Eric Weingartner with Weingartner Racing. Today's video is about a big block Chevy that got dyno tested. It's my 540 big block Chevy dyno mule. I've used this for a while, but in all fairness, it hasn't been back on the dyno in a year. This particular test that you're watching the video on for right now, we're comparing different intake manifolds. So 3 of them, and they're all big. This is not small intake manifold testing. This is let's go balls to the wall. So the 3 that are tested is the Edelbrock 2896, the Super Victor 2. And then we've got the Hulk right here. This is the big one, comes from Chris Ratko. And the part number for this is 5598. And the last one is a Profiler Sniper 2. All of them are stock except for a slight variation. The Hulk is completely stock. It is not port matched at all. The 2896 is port matched to the heads, no other port work. The Profiler, the Sniper 2, is also port matched, but it was done by Bobby, and he was nice enough to let me borrow these. So Bobby at NK Performance is who I'm referring to. He'd watched one of my previous videos, and I mentioned, man, I really would like to test the Sniper and that Hulk. And he said, I've got both. You want to test them? I said, absolutely. And so he's nice enough to send them to me to allow me to test. So that was the reason for it. But he'd already port matched that Sniper 2, and for whatever reason, it fit on the heads pretty good. So pleasantly surprised. This Hulk had nothing done to it. It has no port match. So you might say, well, that's at a disadvantage. Except for this. I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now, you can't port match this one because this port openings are already bigger than the head. And the gasket I'm using is a AFR 6856. So it's the same as that you would use on an AFR 385. So the openings are very big. This actually has the top of the port is above the head. So you couldn't port match. The material's already gone. The bottom floor is almost at the same floor as the head. You could maybe mill off this about 30 or 60 at the most, and you could get it to run perfectly flat with it, but the top would still be above it. So there's no port match. As far as widths, it's perfect that way. So anyway, that's them. I'm gonna go ahead and tell you the results now, then we can talk more about the engine itself, because most of you just really want to know the results. So we'll start off with the first one that was tested. The Super Victor 2896. It made 912 horsepower at 7,100 RPMs. It then made, for torque, 719 foot-pounds of torque at 6,300 RPMs. Not bad. It's got a little spice to it, right? It's running pretty good. This engine sounds wicked, as you could tell from the video, hopefully. The next intake that got changed was this one. The Hulk. Now it took a while, about 2.5 hours. It should have taken 18 minutes. It took 2.5 hours, which I'll show you some of the problems that kind of held us up on changing it. But got it changed and put on there. This one, like I said, same configuration. It made 895 horsepower at 7,200 RPM, 695 foot-pounds of torque at 6,200 RPM. So that's the Hulk. Not bad. Nothing to sneeze at. The Super Victor still got it by, looks like, 517. The last one that was tested was the Profiler Sniper 2. And same process that we did before. It made 914 horsepower at 7,100 RPM. And it made 721 foot-pounds of torque between 59 and 6,000 RPM. When I show you the dyno chart, you'll be like, wait a minute, that Profiler made 730 torque. That's only because that's where it rolled in at. So we're starting the pulls at like 55 to 5,600 RPMs. The dyno kind of jerks when you first start it that way. If we let it settle down, it probably wouldn't do that, but it doesn't matter. Anyway, that's a bogus number. 730 is really not it. The 721 is the accurate one, and that's why I told you that. And I'm going to tell you about some of the weird stuff with this. The that went along with this testing. So if you keep watching, there's some little tidbits you're like, no way. And yeah, it's cool. But anyway, now that you know the results, here's the actual engine. This engine is a 540 big block Chevy. So I got this block. It's a Merlin 4 block from World. They were nice enough to help me out on this a year or so ago. It's a 4.5 bore. It hasn't been overboard 30. It's exactly 4.5 bore, which makes this, with the stroke, a 540. The crankshaft comes from Scat. It's a 4340. They make a nice piece. It doesn't have center counterweighted crankshaft. It's not that. It's just your standard one. So it's the cheapest of their 4340 line that they sell. And it's a 4250 stroke. So again, you've got a 540. The rod is a Scat H-beam rod with an ARP 2000 cap screw. The piston is a Molly piston, but it's not stock. So I'm gonna bear with me as I go on a little tangent here, but it makes sense with the piston. The piston and the rod are the same piston and the rod that were in the 2014 Engine Masters Challenge 540 I built. So I built a 540 to compete in the Engine Masters in 2014. This is the piston and rod that came out of it. And the reason why I'm saying that is because during that time they had rules. And one of the rules is you can't be over 11.5 to 1 compression ratio. So I already had the piston. And the piston, if you were to buy it stock, has a 39cc dome, which is a lot. It would have made me illegal. At the time I was running an RHS head and it had a 131cc combustion chamber. So at the time, the company no longer exists, sadly. Rebco Machine in Wichita, Kansas, I sent them the pistons and they milled down the dome because it's a solid dome to give me about 20 cc's, and I can't remember the exact number, 20 cc dome. I also had them put lateral gas ports in the piston ring. That helps build more power. The last thing I had them do is cut the valve pocket to a bigger valve, because in case you happen to get those power pack pistons, they only clear a 2300 intake valve. Obviously, I'm going to run something bigger, so I wanted more opportunity. So I had them cut it out so it would clear a 2375 intake valve, which is not what I ran, but just in case I chose to. This made the chambers much smaller so I could get legal. So with that piston that's in the engine as it is, it's 12 to 1 compression ratio. We did run it on 110. We probably could have run it on pump gas. You're like, no, you can't. I'm going to test that just to show you can. But regardless, it's 12 to 1. It was actually higher the last time I used this head on the test. So the head itself, it's a ProMax 317. Now this one's got, if you watch my channel, it's been used several times. Its first stock configuration, we used it on a 496 and tested it that way. Then I milled it down to 110 cc chambers, because initially they're 119, and retested it. Well, that's a lot, by the way, to mill off. So anyway, when I milled it off like that, it caused a couple problems. The biggest one is when it went on the 540, because of the camshaft, there was no piston and valve clearance. So Dunsworth himself, because he assembled this engine initially, he had to cut the valve notches in the pistons deeper so that it would clear. Otherwise, I would have no piston and valve, and that's no bueno. Initially, I also had a 2300 valve and a 50-degree seat on that. This time that it got tested, that ProMax head, I was like, I fully ported it. Because I thought, I'm going to gain a whole lot of power. I'll fully port this. This thing's going to be bad to the bone. The downside is I cut it out to a 2350 intake valve. Here's why it lost compression ratio. I had to maintain the same valve drop. For those that don't know what valve drop is, it's the amount that the valve moves from when it's fully seated in the head to when if you set it on a flat surface and you let the valve drop onto a flat surface, how far did it go? That's called valve drop. I had to maintain the same valve drop because I didn't have any piston in the valve. So when you cut out to a larger valve, you actually lose piston in the valve because the bottom part of the valve is now closer to the piston. So the only way to get around it is to sink it. If I sink the valve in, the chamber grows, which is what happened. So I lost compression ratio that way. So sadly, yeah, I don't like to lose compression ratio because that seems like it always hurts, and probably the reason why I didn't gain much. As far as airflow, the porting gained like 30 CFM, and I'll do a whole different video about that. But anyway, thanks for letting me go on the tangent. Point being is, it's a ProMax head. It's got a small chamber. It yields 12 to 1 compression ratio. The heads flowed like 430, 2350 intake valve, 188 exhaust valve. The camshaft, because you probably skipped forward to this, the camshaft, I've lost the cam card, but I know what the specs are. It's a 275 degrees of duration at 50 thousandths on intake, 288 on exhaust at 50 thousandths. This is ground on 112 lobe separation, and it's installed at a 110. The lobe lift is 484 on intake, and I think it's the same on exhaust. I might have done a 474. Regardless, doesn't matter. Because of the rocker ratio, which is a 1.717, this gives me an 822 lift on intake and exhaust. So that's what it is. The last time we had tested with this particular engine, we had a set of AFR 385s on there, and I tested with a 1.8 rocker. We had to take them off and not use them this time. I mean 1.8 on the intake side. We had to take it off this time because of I don't know, something was wrong with our geometry, but the push rod was trying to hit the back of the rocker for some reason. It didn't do that on the AFR, but it absolutely did it on this one. So then the rocker did gain some power when we tested with the AFR. So that was a little bit of a loss, but not a lot. But anyway, that's the camshaft. As far as the carburation and stuff, this is where you're going to be like, why'd you do this? I ran a 2-inch open spacer, and I ran a 1250 CFM carburetor, Dominator. The reason for the 1250 is because the last time it was on, we made one glory run with this AFR 385 heads, and we let the oil get really hot, and we cooled the water down, and we put the big carburetor on it, and it went 941. It's kind of like cheating up the numbers, but that's what it did. In all fairness, the whole rest of the time it was like 915. So doing all that really bumped it up. So I was like, well, I really want it to do good now. Let's put the 1250 on. But in earlier testing with the Ford, actually, is the first time I looked down, because usually I use a tapered spacer, tapered 4-hole. But when I put the 1250 on and I looked down at the bores, the carburetor was bigger than the bores on my tapered spacer. So I was like, I'll just run an open spacer. It should make more power. And that's just how it ran. I don't think it helped at all. Anyway, air fuel ratios always maintain the same. That's essentially it. Besides, the dyno has 2 1/8 inch headers. And that's about the sum of what happened with it as far as the engine combination. Now I'm going to show you some pictures of the manifold so you can see what had to be modified, especially on this Hulk, to get it to work. So you can see exactly what all was there. But if you've stuck around this long, I think you deserve something because you had to listen to me. So I'm going to tell you this. I tested a few different things. Some are stupid. So I'll tell you the first dumb thing that got tested, and it was truly by accident. On the Sniper 2, this is a dumb, I don't do this. This is stupid. And I didn't mean to do it. We just did it because we're an idiot. Me, idiot, not anybody else. When I got the manifold from Bobby, he had off the back here, he had a little port that went down. Essentially, it's just a vacuum port. He probably used it to see how much vacuum the engine's pulling, so to see if it was restricted in any way. I had forgot to plug the hole. So on the very first run with the Sniper 2 on there, it has and this is not a small hole. This is like a 3/8. And I'm like, we put the carburetor on and it's idling fine. It's not idling high either, because I don't know why. That's the other thing. I was like, didn't even think anything out, except for I'm watching the O2 sensor. I was like, that's like 15 to 1. It's like, man, David Visor let me borrow this 1250 carburetor, by the way. I was like, man, not bad. I like its idle and lean. I prefer it that way. Anyway, I didn't pay attention to the O2 at all. And by the way, it's not on the dyno sheets. That's measured, and obviously we didn't have the air hat hooked up, so it's not right anyway. But anyway, so I'm watching the actual O2 sensor only during the idle, and I, for whatever reason, didn't watch it during the run because I'm a moron. And we made the whole pull with that way. It was probably leaner and all get out. The only benefit to that is I just changed plugs. Anyway, I was like, oh my gosh. So I changed all the plugs, and I look back there, and that's when I see it, like, oh, you left off the cap. Oh my gosh. This ran super lean through the whole pull. I hope I didn't tear something up. But I'm pulling all the plugs anyway. Everything looked fine. Put the cap back on and make another pull. It was way lean, evidently, with the vacuum leak. Like, it's probably like 14s, probably almost 15s. And luckily, it didn't tear up anything, because whenever we put the cap back on that plugs that hole, it made more power. And actually, the power you see is its best ones. So that was one dumb test. Don't recommend that. So if you're like, you should check the AFR, and and did you adjust the jetting for each one of the manifolds? Nope. You want to know why? Because even with a huge vacuum leak, which has got to be over a point leaner, it only lost 4. And I know you're like, nah, 4. So adding an extra jet or whatever, I don't think so. But anyway, that was one thing. The second thing was this. If you go back in time, so this will be a future video too. If you go back maybe 6 months, I said I had a test between a projected tip spark plug and a non-projected tip spark plug. On the flow bench, it seems always the non-projected tip spark plug flows more air. So if you flow the head with this non-projected tip, it flows more. But I was like, I want to try this on the dyno. So that's what I did. So I done on the last time it was done was on the Ford, and the Ford has no dome. It had a flat top, and this projected tip made more power. So I was like, I wonder if that's still true with a big block. Because if you know anything about big blocks, they have to have domes. And there's a notch there, so I was like, I wonder. So that was tested. That'll be a later video too. But I did test that, and the one thing I forgot, because I can already hear the comments, because that got commented the most, did you index them? No, I didn't. But anyway, that was tested. That's a later video too. Anyway, I'm going to show you the stuff on the manifold now and go from there. Okay, here's some of the things with the manifold. So I was actually incorrect in part of this. So this is the gasket. See, it says for an AFR 357. That's the same one that fits a 385. If you put it on there, and let's say we got it to line up perfectly. So we put the floor together. It's still, this is what I mean. It still covers up the top. So there is no port match that you could get, because it's still off slightly. Not enough to we're like, oh my gosh, right? It's still not that. So not a horrible deal. But the problem was, let's pretend this gasket's the head. It was actually sitting like this on the head. So see what I mean? Where you'd have like this gap here, and then the manifold's literally touching the head at the top because it's being shrouded that way. So maybe that's part of the reason why it didn't do as well. The only way you could fix that is to mill off the manifold, because essentially it would cause the manifold to start scooting further and further down, and eventually you would get to that. But still, even that, I'm trying to do this one-handed, you're still going to be, yep, right there. You're still covering up slightly part of the top, but that wouldn't be so bad. So maybe if you chunk it up in a mill and keep doing that down, you could get it there. You could tell the widths are close, but they're not quite. So maybe that's the reason why I didn't make as much power. And I don't doubt that a bit. I actually think the thing that hurt it most wasn't so much the widths not being kind of close. It was sitting like that. So milled off some more, it would have done fine. Now, the thing though is, and I can't blame them for this, remember my heads are milled 60, so my intake port on my head's already sitting lower because it's milled. However, Bobby's deck's lower too, so he's gonna be in the same position when he puts this on anyway. So, however, I'll say this. Remember, this is a big gasket opening. If you took I'm gonna grab another one, because I actually had a customer that we wanted to do that. This is the AFR gasket that fits like the 335, 315s. You're not even close. So that's it. It's covering the top. So if you're trying to put it on a small head, this intake, you ain't gonna work. It ain't gonna work. So, but that's not what kept us up. That's not the problem that kept us from making pulls on the dyno. That wasn't it. So that hurts power, yeah. But that wasn't the problem. This was. This is a notch that they have from the factory, right? And you're like, why is this? In case you're wondering, this is the front. This is the rear. This notch really should be the entire way. I had to do this. So let me explain. On a stock block, let me grab my stock block right here. See, I have a mock-up manifold on it now. This is the front of the block, and you have your China rail, you have nothing except for that little notch there, but that's it. On a World, there's a notch right here. And I think I have a Dart one here too. Let me pause for a second. Right there's my Dart Big M Sportsman. This is just for mock-up. You're like, oh my gosh, this is just mock-up. There's no notch. See, it's flat all the way across. But on the Merlin, you have a notch here. So my only thinking on this is he probably has this, but it needed to be on that side where the notch is on the Merlin. This way, this intake would fit either if it's on a Merlin or a Big M. However, I had to do this, which is, it just took time. But that was only one of the problems. So this took a little bit of time to get it to sit, because you'd set it on there, and this whole part right here, you couldn't slide the manifold forward. So you'd sit it on, and the bolt would be here for the head. Or sorry, it'd be here. But you couldn't move the manifold forward to get it to line up with the bolt hole because it's hitting a part on the China rail, hence this notch. This should have been either the whole way or on this side, now that I looked at the Big M. But that's only one problem. That's all the way through, by the way. I just saw that. For those getting in that, that's okay. Let me show you what I mean. I didn't pay attention to that. This right here, if you look at the way that this is where the distributor goes, by the way, for those that don't know. Here's the problem. See how it's cut down like that? On a 9/8 deck one, they're flush here. They're flush with the top. Essentially what they did is they had this was probably made for a 10-2 deck. They milled the sides off to get a fit of 9/8. Probably not quite enough, but it still has this like this for a 10-2. Because on a 10-2 manifold, they actually do this exact same thing. And then you might say, why do they do this for a 10-2 and not a 9/8 deck manifold? Here's the reason why. On a 10-2, so that you can use your 9/8 distributor, they notch the manifold so it sits in the same height. So you don't need a taller distributor for when you're doing a 10-2 versus a 9/8, because they notch the distributor so it sits down lower. So you can use the same one. The problem is when you have this notch and it's made for a 9/8, when we go to stab the distributor in, the distributor's about 3/8 of an inch above this. So it's bottom down on the oil pump shaft and it's above this. Wouldn't be an issue at all if I had a slip collar distributor, because then you could just lower it down, make it work. Don't have one. So instead what we did is we took a 3/8, we had a seat, an intake a seat for a cylinder head. We put it underneath the distributor, and then we put another seat right here so the clamp could hold, and that's what we did. That's how we made it work. So, but looking at this hole, just for Bobby, when you get this, make sure you put some silicone in there. So I'm feeling you're gonna have an oil leak somehow, because that goes right to the bottom. Anyway, that was another lesson learned. Because like, why aren't we getting it? Why is not the distributor not going all the way down? What the hell? It's like literally 30 minutes before we're like, oh, duh. Because this is how it looks. That's how it should be. See how it's above? Like if you take this distance, this distance. This distance is way under. But anyway, that was the other problem. So the biggest one is getting it on. Had it all dirty from silicone, because I thought, oh, this would be easy. Just slap on and go. Because I did mock it up on my mock-up block to make sure it fit the heads. Because I was worried that this would make contact, and it didn't. So that part was like, great. The bolt holes, great. Did not think at all about the China rail. Didn't think about the distributor. Both bit me. So that's the reason why it held up on this. This was just like, had to figure out why it wasn't going down. Oh, because of that. Is this usable? Absolutely. You just need an adjustable slip collar distributor. You'd set your distributor in until it bottoms all the way out. Lower your strip collar distributor part down all the way till it hits this. Tighten it up. Take the distributor back out. Put a gasket in. That's 60. So you have 60 thousandths clearance. Put it back on and you're good. Didn't have an adjustable strip collar distributor. Anyway, the only other part was that, because I was like, why is this not going forward? Because trust me, it's frustrating. You're like, ports aren't lining up. Oh, the bolts aren't lining up. Let's slide it forward. Why is it? What's it stuck on? There you go. Lessons learned. But that was the only problem with that. I just want to show you this port match before you think I cheated up this 2896. It's not even great. I was just in a hurry. It's not beautiful at all. It's like, don't give an F. It's my own stuff. Whatever. It did gain some doing this, but it's not even close to perfect. But anyway, I thought I'd show you that. Because you stuck around, this is the comparison between all three manifolds. The bottom line is the Hulk. As you can tell, it's down significantly from the others. I'm sure the port match is causing part of that, so no doubt on that part. But anyway, the only way to know for sure is to test it again, and I don't own this manifold, and then I have to do a lot of work to make it work anyways. But maybe someday in the future we'll get to try it again. But as it is, it's just down from the others. But you can see there that the profiler is up above that 2896, especially in the lower, and surprisingly, it still has more at the top too. It's a pretty nice deal. Well, there you go. That's all I got for you. It's a nice combination. There will be 2 later videos about this, obviously, if you made it this far. One being about the head porting and why it did or didn't do what I wanted it to do. Ugh. And 2, of course, about these spark plugs. So, but anyway, I got a lot of questions on this engine. The bad part is I have had 0 time to analyze any results. So anyway, I feel that I need to look and see more what's going on. It's like part of me wonders, there's got to be a different restriction at this point. Because here's a little, since you stuck around this long, I'll tell you. Port matching that manifold gained it almost like 15 or 20. And when we went from the Brodix manifold, which was the 4150 style, and I switched to the Edelbrock 2896, it gained like 45 horsepower. So it's like, wow, the intake must be the restriction. But now we've tested that, and they're all landing about the same. So at this point, and then the head flow seems like it makes no difference at all between the 385, which flowed a little bit more than these Pro Maxes, same power. So something is definitely limiting it. The only thing I have left is the headers, but I'm like, those same headers made 1,041 on your 565. I don't know. I need to look more at the data. Sadly, I don't have time. Guys, thanks for watching this. I know you hate hearing me talk and you just dread to hear the results. I get it. But I'm trying to avoid, because I don't have time to read all the comments, and I know people put stuff in the comments all the time asking questions, and maybe I just left it out in the video. So if I put it all in the video, at least I can say the information there, just got to watch it. So I know some of you hate to hear me gab. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Remember, I am no Superman. I did raise Superboy. I do not port cast iron heads. The best way to reach me is email. I do not respond to Facebook or Instagram messages. So you guys take care.